Hello, my name is Tristina Dooch, and I will be doing my presentation on the cohesive social bond made by religion in the early American colonies. To understand why the colonies happened at the time that they did, we have to understand first the climate that the settlers were fleeing from, because they were in fact fleeing for the most part. Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries was a pretty bad place for people of almost any religion. The religious wars, Catholics versus Protestants, were far-flung and pretty much all-pervasive throughout the entire continent at this time, as the Catholics and Protestants fought each other for various religious and political reasons. Some notable examples of horrific persecutions were in 1554 in Ghent. Mennonites and Anabaptists were systematically executed by the Catholic rulers. Same thing in 1555, 1 year later in England. John Rogers is generally regarded as being the first of many Protestant people executed by Queen Mary, the Catholic queen between her Protestant siblings. Also during this time, the Huguenots in France were being pretty systematically executed and exiled and hunted by their Catholic brethren. Then on the other hand, once we get to 1615, back in England again, the Jesuits, the Catholics, were now being persecuted and killed by the Anglicans, who were the Protestant sect in their country. And then another horrific example is in 1731, when the Lutherans were expelled from Salzburg by the Catholic ruler at the time, and they were, many of them, froze to death in the winter because they did not have time to collect any of their belongings. So that is for the example of what they were fleeing from, and honestly the colonies probably could not have done a worse job of creating a peaceful environment if they had been trying to. So when we look at some of the earliest examples, we have, of course, the Mayflower Compact, which was unique for the time and for pretty much any time, in that its group of men came together and set out a series of laws that they all believed in that were all focused on biblical principles. And in their own words, they wrote, "In the name of God, Amen. We whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord King James and the rest of his titles, having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith and the honor of our king and country a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these presents, solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic, for a better ordering and preservation, and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof do enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and officers, from time to time, as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. In witness whereof we have hereunto subscribed our names at Cape Cod, 11th of November, 1621. This is an example of how these people saw religion and politics as so intertwined as not to be able to be separated. The reasons they list for people following these laws are because God ordained them, because God is a God of order. That is how they saw their world. They used their religion, Christianity, in this case Puritanism, or separatism, as the glue to hold their society together. They believed in these laws because God believed in them. God ordained them. That was what held these people together in the face of unbelievable hardships during that winter. Cut to a few years later, when we have the settlement of the Massachusetts Bay Colony by John Winthrop and his group of Puritans, which was a slightly different set from the Separatists. He put out a list of 9 reasons why he thought a plantation in New England was necessary and why it would work. And of these 9 reasons, all of them mention biblical principles. The whole earth is the Lord's garden, and he hath given it to mankind with a general commission, quotes Genesis 1:28, to increase and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, which was again renewed to Noah. The end is double and natural, that mankind might enjoy the fruits of the earth, and God might have his due glory from his creatures. Why then should one strive here for places of habitation at such a cost as would obtain better land in another country, and at the same time suffer a whole continent as fruitful and convenient for the use of man to lie waste without any improvement? See, so he's explaining why mankind should expand in their geographic locations by citing the Bible. And of course, North America was already settled by humans. He just, as with most Europeans at the time, did not really see them as human, which is another failing for another discussion. These two are just some of the most easily explained of all of the different Protestant settlements. And they weren't the only ones, like the French Huguenots came to settle a lot of them in Canada, a lot of them in the South in Florida and Louisiana, places that still have a strong French influence today. The Moravians and the Mennonites, which were the Dutch and Germans, came to a lot in like Pennsylvania area, along with the Quakers. All of these different groups still have one thing in common, in that they came together with other people of their denomination. They all agreed by certain rules, certain ideas, certain ideals as to what a colony should be and what a group of Christians who rule it should be like. And they all use their different religions or slightly different expectations of what religion should be as the glue that held each of these colonies together, and the successful ones all had this in common. And so we cannot overstate the importance of religion as a social glue for early America.